Good morning, campers. How's it going, friends? How are you? I'm doing wonderful. If you were curious, beautiful day in New York. My neighbor is doing some yard work per usual. Wouldn't be a New York City video if it wasn't for a little bit of noise. Am I right? Am I right? That's fine. You know what? That's the payoff. That is the payoff that I have to have because you read the title, you know what's going on, all right? I'm talking about my favorite books that I picked up on the side of the road. Oh, yep. It's happening. It's happening. In a lot of my vlogs, I have picked up quite a few books on the side of the road, but I haven't finished them all. So I'm not going to be featuring those in this video. These are books that I have finished, books that I have ample commentary on, and books that I think were just fab and just happen chance fell right into my line of vision on the side of the road. Love it. This is what makes New York my favorite place in the world. And if I have to deal with a little bit of background noise, that's fine. Give me those free books. I have 6 books. So first and foremost, let's just start off with a book that you have seen. This was in my most recent vlog, but I just happened to stumble on it. I'm not going to go too deeply into it, but this is one of the most recent side of the road reads that I enjoyed. It was Yes, Daddy. I'll link the vlog somewhere up there. You've probably seen it, but it was great. This is a 2021 release, May 18th, 2021, which is crazy. I think I wanted to actually write to the publishing house to request this book, but I didn't get around to it. The atmosphere, the world was just telling me that you have to have it anyway. I'm not going to go too deep into what this book is about just because I do have another vlog, but it involves a guy coming to New York, falling in with a famous playwright. Things get weird, things get crazy. It hurts your soul to read and know that things are going on like that in the world. But it's a good summer read. There we go. Number 1. Boom. Second book. I'm gonna kind of vibe between having physical copies and not having copies. There are about 3 books I think that I don't have with me physically. This next book that I'm gonna be talking about was an actual manifestation. This is a book that I physically produced in my head. I'm convinced. I was sitting outside with Oleg one day. It was during the midst of the pandemic when it was at its worst. And I remember turning to him and saying, I want to read a book about 9/11 and I want to have firsthand accounts of the tragedy. I want to read what people that were physically there and people that physically experienced it felt. I want to read their own thoughts on paper. And I was like, I can't find a book like that. I just can't find a book like that. Fast forward a month or so, and I'm walking from a park and I look down on the side of the road, and in pristine condition was a book called The Only Plane in the Sky, just sitting there looking at me, begging me to take it. And I looked down and I said, do you want to come home with me? And the book said, yes, I do. And so I took it home and I read it in probably 2 days. This book is exactly how I described what I wanted to Oleg. It's a firsthand account divided into a timeline narration of what unfolded on the day of 9/11. Actually, the beginning paragraph starts with an astronaut in space talking about how he could see only one plane flying in the sky. That is the titular name. It is in reference to they grounded all of the flights on 9/11 and there was only one plane in the sky, and that was the president flying. And so this details firsthand accounts of people that were physically in the building that were able to escape. It chronicles firsthand accounts of firefighters that were on the scene. It chronicles people that had been in the building just like a day or two before. It chronicles people that just happened chance didn't get onto the flight that day. It talks about newscasters. It talks about pedestrians. It talks about people, how they're affected in Greenpoint and Queens and places, the outlying boroughs of New York. It's so good. It details everything. It details down to specific timestamps. As a New Yorker especially, I felt an intense kinship to it. Just being able to walk down those streets and being able to really visualize what was there. It's great. I think if you just want a very intimate and visceral retelling of such a horrific tragedy, this is a great book for you. It's definitely sad. I mean, it's horrifying to be in the lives of those people, but if you want to learn firsthand accounts of what happened, this is a great book. The author, I mean, he's not really an author. He just kind of compiled these stories. You can tell that he treats the people that he interviewed with the utmost respect. So I thought that that was fabulous. Great book, side of the road find. I cannot believe that that was on the side of the road. Hands down, one of my favorite books of last year. The third book that I'm going to talk about, this one is also another arc. This one is Fortune Smiles by Wallace Johnson. I had never read anything by this author, wasn't even aware of this author. Apparently it was released in 2015. Somebody had put it out last year and I just happened to stumble on it. It's a slightly older book, so it's been in the circle of literature for a while, but I had just happened upon it. It was great. I saw it and I said, that's a blank, boring cover and that screams something I'd be interested in. This is all short stories. What I found most interesting about these short stories was that they were incredibly vast. Some of them are kind of sci-fi, like the first story that he begins with is this woman that is kind of communicating with her husband through Kurt Cobain in like a futuristic world. It's very strange, bear with me. He also kind of digs deep into a lot of taboo subjects. Like he talks about the goings on of the dark web. There's a lot of stories about that. Trigger warning for sure, pedophilia, sexual abuse, things like that in these stories. But even though these stories are taboo, and I think that he kind of writes a little bit about the underbelly of society in some of these stories, he does have a great way of creating these characters and these offbeat, difficult situations and making them so human. The last story is about North Koreans trying to get into South Korea and this idea of whether or not you want to commit to beginning an entirely new life and what you have to leave behind. It was great. I really, really liked this. Weird short stories, deep, dark short stories, but not difficult to read by any means as far as how the writing is executed. So yeah, another side of the road find. Liked it. Loved it. Can't get enough of it. And then the fourth book that I'm going to talk about was my #1 hated book last year. But I want to show that I have changed as a person, and I can't stop thinking about this book. This book is called Professor Anderson's Night. Actually, it was right before shit really hit the fan in New York with COVID, and I was walking past a bookstore and they were giving away free books, and I was about to go quarantine upstate with my parents for a while, so I picked it up. I loved the cover. I haven't touched upon a lot of Scandinavian literature, so I figured I'll pick this up and read it. Now, last year I read it and it was really boring, which is fine, but since then, I can't stop thinking about it. It's a very
existential in your head
sort of story, and it follows Professor Anderson. He is a man who lives a very insular life. He lives by himself, and he does have this neighbor who he watches every single night. And one night, he believes that he sees his neighbor get murdered. And so the whole story is just him struggling with this idea of whether or not he should inform people, whether or not he should notify the police and become a part of this investigation. Okay, that's it. It's all that's happening. Nothing really happens in the story, but it's just a very deep analytical look into how people process trauma and how people process the unbelievable. There's a whole, there's 10 pages of him being at a dinner party, and I actually hate it, but now that I can't stop thinking about it, I'm like, you know what, maybe there's a brilliance to that. And I think it's important to look back on things that we used to hate and see why we hated them and try to evaluate if it can be salvageable, which I think that this book was. So on to the fifth book. I actually found this book last year. Again, my house right next to me, they always have ARCs out, and I saw this, I saw the cover, and I also said, yeah. That book is Want. Rebecca does a lot of talking about this book. She does a great job. I don't think I'm even going to do half of what she is capable of doing as far as persuasion to read this book. But this follows a woman. She's in her 30s, I believe. She has a family. She lives in Brooklyn. She is an academic. She went to school. She has her PhD. But right now, her life is not going anywhere where she wants it to be. She's working two kind of sad jobs, and everything that she ever anticipated for herself has not come true. There's this sub-narrative of her reminiscing about her relationship with her best friend in high school and how they went on to college and traveled together. After all of that, they no longer have a strong communication. Her friend steps back into her life, and this whole floodgate of realization of what she wants in life kind of comes true. I read this probably in like a day or two. It's not a difficult read. I would actually probably reread this, honestly. It's a New York-based book, classic, love that. Love the cover of it. I think it's beautiful. And I think it's a really in-your-head book. Again, I think a lot of people can relate to this story. There's no super plot-driven twists or narrative, but I think as far as just sitting in yourself and being able to empathize and understand where someone's coming from, this is a great book for that. I loved it, thought about it, kept me in my head, enjoyed it. Yeah. So, last but not least, the last book that is one of my all-time favorite books, and this is not gonna be for everyone, that is for damn sure. It is Art, Sex, Music by Kosi Fanny Tutti. Yeah, I might be the only person in this auditorium saying, yes, I love you, you're great, yes. This was actually a book that Oleg picked for me. He found it on the side of the road. He liked the cover. He brought it home. It's a thick-ass book. I started reading it, and I came to find out that I was actually pretty familiar with Kosi Fanny Tutti, and I didn't even realize it. So this book is a memoir. It details her life as a young girl living in England and soon becoming one of industrial music's biggest founding members. So she kind of came into the main spotlight through the group Throbbing Gristle and her art house team Coombe Transmissions, who she co-founded with Genesis P. Orridge, who also is a huge alternative, counterculture icon. And this is Tutti's life, she's writing, she's just a cool chick, like cool. She worked in the sex industry, and she was also doing all of these art shows and eventually going into music, and she's just maintained her authenticity throughout her entire life. I think that the way that she writes is so non-pretentious, and she is just a huge advocate of being yourself. And for someone like me, this was one of the most life-changing memoirs and books that I have ever read in my entire life. I'll probably end up buying another copy of it. I love this book. Like I said, I think there's maybe like 3 people that might care about this book, but I loved this book. It meant so much to me, and just to be able to find it on the side of the road, that is what made it so beautiful. It was like serendipity. So there we have it, side of the road finds. Maybe I'll make this a series, I don't know. It might be an every couple of months series as I actually read the books that I found on the side of the road, but these are some of the most recent ones that I found and loved, baby. So you let me know. Have you ever found a book on the side of the road that you're like, how did you get here? Who left you? Let me know. Let me know if it was life-changing and great. I also, hold on, wait, I want to show you guys. I'm sorry. Is that a spaceship? That's actually where I sleep at night. Oh, my friend gave me a light. I love it. I can't get enough of it. Also for free. Also, like 80% of my apartment were things found on the side of the road. So, thrifty girl. Thrifty girl. All right, love you guys.